Yes. It's out. Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order for the Charter Authorizing Panel meeting of August 17th, 2016. I'll ask that everyone in the audience please silence all of your electronic devices. The Charter Authorizing Panel oversees the authorization, renewal, revision, and revocation of charters. The Arkansas Quality Charter Schools Act of 2013 requires Commissioner Key to appoint ADE staff to the panel, and that panel sits before you today. Our goal is to facilitate a fair and responsible hearing, so we will request that each person speaking speak directly into the microphone, state your name and your title for the record. I will ask that you continue to speak clearly into the microphone for the benefit of the panel, the audience, the viewing audience. We do have a number of people that watch this via live streaming, and the meeting is recorded. So please speak clearly into the microphone. Our court reporter, Ms. Sharon Hill, will be providing a transcript of the meeting, and it will be posted to the ADE website. The first order of item is the chair's report, and I have no report. Does anyone on the panel have a report? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have the minutes of the May 18th meeting before you, and I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve the minutes.
A little louder for the microphone. Ms. Pfeffer has made a motion, seconded by Mr. Rogers, to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Minutes are approved. Action item 1. Ms. Boyd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For our first action item today, we have an open enrollment charter school application to be in either the Fayetteville or the Farmington School District. Before we get started with the application hearing, would you like to hear the procedures? All right, we'll have Jennifer Davis to go over those for you.
Ms. Davis, you're recognized.
Hi, good morning. Jennifer Davis, staff attorney with the department. The procedures you're going to follow today will be all persons wishing to provide testimony to you will need to be sworn in with the exception of attorneys. The open enrollment charter applicant will have 20 minutes to present its case to you for approval. Parties in opposition will also have 20 minutes, followed by 5 minutes for the applicant to respond. After that, you may begin your question and answer session, and then you can either make your final decision today or take it under advisement. If you make it today, you do have a Google Doc that you can record your reasoning for your vote. Also, one thing to remind is that the charter is a contract, so this is going to be a negotiation process, and anything that the applicant agrees to today that may differ from any paperwork that they've previously submitted or submitted today will become part of any charter that you do grant. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Ms. Boyd?
All right, to start off the presentation for the Fayetteville Classical Academy application, we have Dr. Mary Ann Duncan, who serves as the superintendent of responsive ed schools here in the state of Arkansas.
I was trying to get my phone out for my timer. All right. If all representatives from the Classical Academy of Fayetteville and anyone speaking in opposition would please stand. Raise your right hand to receive the oath. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you. Dr. Duncan, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good morning, panel. We appreciate your time today, and thank you for consideration of this application. I'd like to introduce the staff that are representing responsive ed today. We have Mr. Ken Harp, Director of Finance, Dr. Steve Burgess, Executive Director of Research, Evaluation, and Instruction, Steve Gast, Executive Director of School Operations, Glenda Simons, Executive Director of Academics. John Thorburn, Director of K-12 ELA and Foreign Language. Curtis Shack, Arkansas Director of Operations and eSchool Arkansas. Katie Stevens, Arkansas Accounting Manager. Rhonda Bradford, Arkansas Federal Finance Coordinator. Susan Provenza, Headmistress of the Northwest Arkansas Classical Academy. And Marla Pearson, Arkansas Special Populations Coordinator. Okay. Please go ahead. So in an outline of our presentation today, we'll be talking about the need, our mission, the theoretical grounding for classical education, and distinctives of the program itself. In looking at the need, the Fayetteville area is one of the fastest growing cities in Arkansas. Between 2010 and 2015, 12.6% growth was shown both in the city and the district. You can see reflective here that that's also reflective of the sizes of the schools in that area. Though information has previously been included in the application, we're including here today the free and reduced lunch information from Fayetteville, Farmington, and contiguous districts for your review. You can see that Fayetteville is at 39, above 39% free and reduced, and Farmington at 38, above 38. Also for your review today, we've included the ethnicity of the contiguous districts to the Fayetteville area. You can see reflective here are the contiguous ethnicities of Fayetteville and Farmington. The mission of Fayetteville Classical Academy is to provide a well-rounded and distinctly 21st century classical education that promotes intellectual curiosity, critical thinking, and virtue, preparing students to make a meaningful contribution in a free society. And at this point in time, I'd like to turn the program over to Dr. Steve Burgess.
Good morning. I'm going to be talking about the theory behind the school initially, and then highlight 4 distinctives of our model.
Mr. Burgess, if you'll give your name and title.
Of course. My name is Steve Burgess, Executive Director of Research Evaluation and Instruction, Responsive Ed. I forgot the doctor there. The theory behind our school, the theoretical grounding, we have a motivational approach that is supported by research, and I'm citing a study by Gottfried and Gottfried 1996 that shows that academic motivation decreases from grades 3 through 8. And there's a body of research to support that students lose motivation the longer that they are in school. And the theory that we are using for this model is self-determination theory, and it represents a framework for everything that we're doing. And I hope by the end of the presentation you'll see how our program aligns with the theory. It's a meta-theory of human motivation applying across domains for all students. It views individuals as naturally inclined to engage and understand their environment, meaning students, and everyone is hardwired to learn. However, social factors such as schooling and parenting can either foster or undermine that motivation. The theory has 3 basic psychological needs that include autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And at the end of the presentation, I'll refer back to those to tie it together how our program aligns with those 3 aspects. To the extent that these needs are met, individuals experience optimal performance and intrinsic motivation. And our approach to this program is that we want to promote autonomous intrinsic motivation and self-regulated learning. We do assess our students in motivation, specifically in self-regulated learning and in cognitive engagement, and we do that at all of our campuses. And we're interested not only in the motivation of our students, but the quality of that motivation. And I'm going to stay on this slide a little longer. There is also research to support that intrinsic motivation aligns with academic achievement. Students who are intrinsically motivated exhibit a desire for challenge, are likely to demonstrate exploration and creativity. They can also sustain attention on tasks, which does result in increased academic achievement. At Responsive Ed, we do have students and campuses from low socioeconomic backgrounds who have performed quite well using our classical model that I'll be referencing today. Specifically, I'm citing a campus in South Dallas called Clay Classical Academy. Again, located in South Dallas, approximately 88% economically disadvantaged, 62% African American, 33% Hispanic. And these students in our most recent state assessment demonstrated 80% passing for all tests, which is quite extraordinary. Next slide, please. I'm going to be talking about four separate distinctives of this program. The first is a 21st century approach to classical education. So we're seeking to balance a classical foundation with a technology-friendly environment, and we believe this is a unique combination. First, the 21st century elements. We anticipate having a ratio of 1 to 2 for Chromebooks. So our program will include technology from the beginning. As we do with all of our campuses, we will use the NWEA MAP assessment, which is a computer adapted assessment. I'm sure the panel is familiar with that. We also use MAP as an alternative metric in our goals, and we're aware of the ACT Aspire MAP linking study, and we have set our goals in relation to state testing results above the state average, but also with respect to MAP. And I would say that these were conservative goals in light of this linking study, and also in light of the changing of the Arkansas assessment in recent years. However, our primary use of MAP is not to predict accountability, but to predict learning and to ensure growth of our students. And so we are using MAP not just as a policy decision maker, but to get to the campuses and inform instruction. We have blended learning elements. It says up there options, but there are really elements to our program that are embedded. It is a teacher-centered approach. It is not a mastery-based approach. However, we have supplemental online curriculum, particularly in the area of math, and we've used programs such as Math Buddies and Dreambox, and we're always evaluating the effect of these programs. I'll be talking later more specifically about our high school program, but we do have a STEM track in addition to humanities for our high school students. Project-based learning will be embedded again in the program, particularly in the middle years in science and then across subjects in high school. And I'm going to stay on the slide a little bit more. We do have classical elements as well combined with these 21st century ideas. Latin is foundational to our program. In the elementary level, we will offer English from the roots up. Middle school, an exploratory course called Lively Latin, grades 6 through 8. And then in high school, students may continue Latin, or we will offer modern languages as well. And we're citing research to show that students who study Latin, particularly for 4 years, tend to do better than other groups on the SAT assessment. We take a historical approach to our subjects. We take pains to be interdisciplinary by design. For example, in science, we teach science historically. We examine how theory, hypotheses, empirical investigation, lead to refined findings, new theory, and subsequent investigation. And so that is a historical process that would transcend disciplines. We require humanities in the 6th and 7th grade. It's really a core course for us, not by Arkansas standards, but it is one of our central courses that all students will take. And we anticipate creating a parallel course in the high school level. And we will offer logic to 9th graders. Next slide, please. The second distinctive is our integrated language arts program. Many elements are traditional classical elements, including explicit phonics, a classical canon, which consists of unabridged works recognized and of established value. Students will be doing transcriptions, narration, recitation from seminal works such as the preamble to the U.S. Constitution. We teach grammar in context, and a little bit more detail on this middle school humanities course. We've identified 7 strands of humanities through which students study different historical periods, including philosophy, literature, art, music, architecture, religion, and technology. And this approach goes throughout these historical units. And finally, in the center is the Socratic method. That is not a freestanding course, but it's a methodology that we use throughout the program. Next slide, please. The third distinctive relates to our high school program. And as I mentioned earlier, we anticipate 2 tracks for our high school students, including STEM and humanities. So the 9th graders would make this choice. We will offer a range of advanced placement courses, and I know we've detailed those in our response. We will offer early college courses, anticipate using the Arkansas Virtual, and also other options for these dual enrollment courses. Our seniors in high school will take part in a project or a thesis comparable to the capstone program of the College Board, though in the 12th grade rather than the 10th or 11th, which is the College Board's policy, that we'll model on that, which is an excellent program. You must take at least 2 advanced placement courses, and then you do a project that ties them together. Regarding our application and outstanding issues, I thought this would be a good moment to mention for the record that we will be seeking course approval for all that are listed, including AP English, Composition, AP Literature, Logic, and Acting 1. And Computer Science has been selected as the additional needed math course. Next slide, please. Our fourth and final distinctive is a smaller public school environment. In year 1, we anticipate a capacity of 264 students. And our vision is that eventually parents would be able to drop off all of their students at a single school from K through 12, rather than splitting families at multiple campuses. Our motto is small by design, and so our students will not fall through the cracks. Our high-performing and low-performing, we will be able to monitor them. And it's an environment where teachers and administrators know students and parents. And we feel that this small environment is conducive to meeting the needs of academically gifted students, artistically gifted students, and also struggling students. Next slide, please. We talk a lot about teaching character, and I think character is embedded in our program. I do like the quote in the box by McNeil: measurable outcomes may be the least significant results of learning. And another way to put that is that many aspects of our program resist measurement and cannot be confined to a bubble on a state assessment. And you see listed to the left things that are difficult to measure, but these are our unstated goals. We want our students to motivate themselves, to appreciate literature, connect the disciplines, develop new interests, develop aesthetic understanding, cultivate a sense of wonder, to write well, to substantiate their opinions, build self-confidence, and foster a love of learning. So going back to the theory behind our program and the elements of self-determination theory, which were autonomy, competence, and relatedness, autonomy is supported by a range of choices that students have throughout the program. We foster student leadership and an interdisciplinary approach, so when a student has a course, that material and that time spent is recognized after they shuffle them up and put them in a different classroom. Competence is ensured by a range of formative assessments, including the MAP assessment, and our program is rigorous, and optimal challenge is another predictor of intrinsic motivation. And finally, our small environment would foster relatedness, and altogether, this is a program designed to support intrinsic motivation and a love of learning. I'm going to bring back Dr. Duncan, but I want to give an example of what she's about to talk about in a quote by Martin Buber. I've taught high school for about 25 years. I may not look it. 25 years is a long time, and I've had a lot of students right in front of me. And what I thought when I was teaching, when I had a 14-year-old, I wondered about them, and I thought, I'm actually teaching that 14-year-old now and a 30-year-old down the road. And so we're taking a long-term approach to these students, and I think that would be the distinctive of our program. I'll bring back Dr. Duncan.
Thank you, Dr. Burgess. So in piggybacking off Dr. Burgess' statements, you can see that we are looking at the long-term view, which is part of what a classical education provides and is assisting to provide at our Northwest Arkansas Classical Academy. Education worthy of the name is essentially education of character. For the genuine educator does not merely consider individual functions of his pupil as one intending to teach him only to know or to be capable of certain definite things, but his concern is always the person as a whole, both in the actuality in which he lives before you now and in the possibilities of what he can become. Martin Buber, 1947. You have before you today a list of waivers, some of which we're requesting to be rescinded. You'll find those on the last page of the waiver section. We'll be glad to answer any questions regarding that. But essentially, we would like to provide an additional classical academy to parents and students within the areas we've requested. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to the panel. May I also have Trip Walter speak at this time to that? He is representing us today for that.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the panel, Trip Walter, staff attorney, Arkansas Public School Resource Center. I just wanted to follow up on what Dr. Duncan said about the waiver list, and especially one point at this time. You'll see that there are still a couple places on that list where there are blanket requests made for all other applicable rules or statutes in a particular area. If you please disregard those. So in other words, the only things that are being requested as far as waivers are the things that are stated on the list. Those particular statutes and rules are stated on the list, and the blanket, so to speak, waivers are being removed. Thank you.
Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Dr. Duncan, you have 5 additional minutes. And 2 remaining from your first 20.
I know the board has several questions, and so I'll be brief. I understand that you have great concern and you have a great responsibility before you today, and I take that very seriously. But I do want you to know, particularly in the last 6 months since I've come on board, we've worked very, very diligently at forming an Arkansas Responsive Ed presence. Our new Arkansas Responsive Ed District office will be open on Hardin Road later this month. We are just awaiting furniture, which is somewhat backlogged at this point in time. You can see on the ground, we are definitely gleaning folks that are steeped in Arkansas standards, Arkansas processes, and Arkansas curriculum and expectations, and we will continue to do so. So I just want you to know that we have worked very diligently to support any additional schools that we bring on underneath the Responsive Ed umbrella. And at this point in time, I'll turn it back to the panel.
Thank you, Dr. Duncan. All right, panel. Who would like to start? Ms. Smith?
Okay, I guess my concern today is it wasn't too long ago that this panel heard from Responsive Ed pertaining to Quest in Pine Bluff, and also Premier, Little Rock, who are Responsive Ed schools who are struggling. When I pulled up the 4 Responsive Ed schools, or there are four within the state right now. When I pulled up the 4 Responsive Ed schools that are currently in the state, and just looked at your report card and looked at the graph on the last page where it compares you to students who are like your students' poverty rate, 3 of the 4 schools were performing under what other schools that had that same poverty rate were performing. And so I guess my concern today is, I know that we allowed you guys to continue with Quest and Pine Bluff and Premier and to continue the work there, and we haven't had a chance to see, there hasn't been time yet. I don't want to say you haven't done it yet, but there hasn't been time yet. School's just now starting. So I guess my concern right now is opening a 5th school under Responsive Ed when we have a couple under Responsive Ed right now that are struggling significantly. And how are we going to support the opening of a new school and support, because I was one of the people when you were here before with the Quest Pine. I was excited about the changes that were being made and the vision in which you guys were going, and recognizing that there was still a lot of work to be done. And so I guess my concern right now is we have yet to do that work. You're in the middle of it right now, and that work is beginning, and then just the idea of opening another school. So those are my concerns right now.
Okay, if I may speak to that, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Burgess to speak to that also. We have worked very diligently in the last several months since we came here with Pine Bluff. We've done extensive professional development. We've also ordered and received additional technology on campus on the ground level. The internet strength in the facility that we're in currently in Pine Bluff was greatly strengthened over the summer to provide additional support for the technology that we ordered. We also have permission and are seeking a curriculum person to work on the ground, specifically with that campus full-time, to support all areas of the curriculum, not just math, not just reading, but all areas. In addition, our campus director from Clay Academy in Dallas, which works with a very similar population and has also been very successful with that population in turning that school around, has provided additional professional development on the ground at Quest Pine Bluff. For Premier, we are working with that population diligently. In the first 2 years, we did have a lot of staff turnover. That has greatly dropped for this coming year, which we feel as a plus. Premier traditionally has many students that rotate in and out the door on a revolving basis, as we sometimes see with students that come to a different environment. Though we work diligently, the campus director there has formed clubs on campus, is working very well with Arkansas Baptist College to utilize areas and spaces to have those club meetings, has been very innovative. We think the support we are now starting to see on the ground level at Premier will make a difference. And we, like every district in the state, are looking at the ACT Aspire scores and looking at the link to MAP And we'll utilize that and continue to utilize that with all of our schools. We're looking specifically at a classical model because we've had great success with classical model, and there's great interest in that. So that's why we're looking at providing that for that area of the state. Dr. Burgess, do you have additional comments?
Thank you. Rather than speaking about the data of the 4 campuses, and I do think that the Northwest Arkansas is the closest to this model, and that's what we've been preparing. However, as a support from the district, we do have a new structure that's in place where we're looking at specific content areas. So we're hiring content directors from K through 12 in math, in language arts, in social studies, and in science that will be supporting our schools in Texas and Arkansas. And so we have the capacity to look carefully and to get to the campuses with people who are expert in that field. And that's a big development and very different than what we've had in the past. And I think that will bear fruit. It's difficult to predict state assessment, but I know we're taking all of the steps necessary through formative assessments 3 times during the year, and we're very confident that we're starting to see gains even in the campuses that you mentioned.
Any follow-up?
Follow-up on that one.
Dr. Saunders?
Yeah, I had a follow-up on that one. In particular, I know you referenced the Academy, Clay Classical Academy in South Dallas. Are there any other classical academies under the umbrella?
We have 7 classical academies all in North Texas. Well, actually, one in Tyler, and the others in North Texas.
Do you have the results of those available on their performance?
Across the board, we can grab those, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Pfeffer?
Good morning, Dr. Burgess. I think this question is for you, and I just want to make sure. When I looked at the summary, if I can find the number you said, I think you said 264 for your first year, but that doesn't match what was in the summary. So I just want to go back and verify your enrollment numbers that you would be requesting.
Certainly. So with charters, a lot of what guides our enrollment, the first, second, and contiguous years, are the facilities available. When we first submitted the application, the facility that we were looking at diligently at that time within Fayetteville was much smaller. And that guides our growth because we start small and we grow small. We grow methodically. And so the numbers represented in the additional information that came out of requests from the internal committee are based on the on the Farmington location, which is larger than the location we originally found in Fayetteville. It was very difficult to work with the landlord so far in advance with the Fayetteville location. That's something that I'm sure other charters in the state are facing. We submit an application in April. That's 16 months from when we want to open school in August.
Okay.
And so a lot of what guides the numbers are the facilities available. You also mentioned Mr. Saunders, Dr. Saunders, about the test scores. Glenda Simons, our educational director, stated that those schools met standard, the classicals you're talking about. And she'll be glad to speak with that if you'd like further documentation or information.
Okay, but to follow up on mine, where can I find your requested enrollment? Because the numbers I'm looking at are starting in 17-18, a maximum enrollment of 147 in grades K-5, then moving to K-6, 7, and in 21-22, a maximum enrollment of 247. Have you sent an update on your enrollment requests? Because I can't find it in my packet.
So the maximum for the school is 688. That maximum has never changed. What guides the growth for and towards that maximum is the facilities issue. What we did submit is with the amended budget with the facilities, we also submitted the first two amended student numbers. So for the budget for year one for the Farmington facility, it's listed as 264 under that budget. For year two, it's 318. So you can see that we did submit an update per that facility. We have never changed our maximum requests of 688 at the max K-12. However, that will not occur until well into our renewal. So that will be well down the road for us.
Okay. Can I go ahead and ask a couple more? All right. So if somebody on the panel can point me to that so I can look at the numbers, I'm just not seeing that in.
Ms.
So it's in the
Pfeffer,
budget.
it's in the original application on the first page.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
I'll look at that in a minute. So a couple of other questions I have. One had to do with some information regarding your career ed courses. And I want to be mindful that as we review applications and make decisions that we try to involve career ed. So I had asked Ms. Boyd to see if career ed could be here, but on your, let me find which document it's in one of your documents, I think it was the, where you list out your schedule, you talk about exploring resources available to curate a comprehensive program for future responsive ed students. So I was wondering what kind of progress towards these comprehensive pathways that you made, and you indicate that you'll offer the required pathways. So I was just going to get some information on what those would look like, and then see if career ed had any concerns that we might need to consider.
This is a situation where we're growing into the grades where it would be applicable, but certainly we want to coordinate with the community and find out the resources available at that time, particularly for internships, and we've modeled that elsewhere, but we need to look at the community and the resources available.
So at this, and I understand that you will be implementing grades, so
Right.
Looking at, I'm not sure now on your timeline of what grades you're implementing and when, but it would be 2 or 3 years before you would have
Exactly.
the high school grades where you would have these courses. But I think for me, it's still important to know now what your plans are in terms of what kind of career pathways would be considered, and but you've not determined those yet? Is
No,
that-
I would suggest that they would parallel our high school tracks, so that the STEM, they would be STEM heavy, and then also in the arts, probably digital aspects of the arts would make sense. So we're going to make it tie into our academic program.
Okay. So, Ms. Boyd, did you say someone from career ed is here?
Yes, ma'am. Kathy
Okay.
Turner is here.
Okay, so maybe my next question might be for Ms. Turner.
Ms. Turner, were you sworn in? Okay. If you'll raise your right hand, let me find my notes. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So just in looking at this, I don't know whether or not you all have had an opportunity to work with this proposed school, and if you've not, what are maybe some thoughts or considerations that might need to be put out there, or concerns that might need to be addressed in thinking of a school that would open and implement things in the next few years?
We have not had the opportunity to even look at this. I wasn't aware until late yesterday afternoon, and I apologize for that. Perhaps I should have been. I do have concerns as long as, because of the general feel that we're in Arkansas now, and how we want to be sure that everything we provide students leads to some type of career pathway for students to be able to reach their goals. We all want to plan and prepare for job in the future. So I've just not had time to look at this, and I apologize for that.
Okay. And I think my concern was whether or not you all were even aware of this. So, and I guess in just a general comment, I think I'm always concerned when there's a proposal, and in the proposal, you know, yes, you do say that you will comply with Arkansas standards associated with CTE. So I know that that promise is there, but without having a concerted plan, I just worry, will we have to come back in the future and check to see are things being done and where are we going to be? And the fact that maybe conversations hadn't started yet, with such a focus now on making sure students are prepared for a career pathway. I see so many opportunities here, and I would feel much better if the school had already reached out to Career Ed and already initiated conversations, so that today we felt more comfortable that a partnership had already been formed, and over the next few years there were going to be some really great things evolved for these kids in addition to the current vision that's there. So I'll just stop there with my comments.
Well, and we may want responsive ed to just kind of jump up here for a second, because on page 9, my page 9, when the question was asked to the charter, explain how the charter will provide career education courses, it says in a response from Response Ed, the director of CTE is currently in the process of exploring ACE resources in an effort to curate a comprehensive program for future responsive ed students. So that to me sounds like there has been collaboration. And so has there been or has there not been? I guess I'm confused there.
So we've looked at exploring internally. We have not reached out to the career technical department, but we'll be more than glad to do that. You know, a lot that drives is the location, where we'll be located, and what students are interested in that area, and what's available for internships, and what's available for workforce readiness. But we will be more than, happy to work collaboratively to provide that. That's at least 5 years down the road.
Okay, and so when I was saying the director of CTE, that was your director?
It was our
not-
internal director.
Okay, gotcha.
Correct. Thank you.
So Dr. Duncan, before you leave the microphone, just to clarify, you have or have not secured a facility in Farmington?
Today, we have a facility in Farmington.
Okay.
That is what we have before you today, because that is an actuality. Trying to tie up the lease in finality in Fayetteville that far out was a great struggle with the original facility we submitted.
And fell through?
Yes, ma'am, making that work would be very difficult at this point in time.
Someone on this side, do you have questions? Dr. Gocher?
Good morning. I think, Dr. Burgess, you might be best to, since this was part of your presentation, one of the things I look at as a panel member is just the expansive opportunities for pupils and parents when we review any kind of application. And recognizing that Northwest Arkansas has wonderful opportunities in public education for a vast array of opportunities and students, I was very appreciative, great presentation by the way, and I was very impressed that you created the distinctiveness, because that was something that when I looked at the slides earlier, something that I was drawn to, because I wanted to see how you are demonstrating an expansive opportunity for students in that area. So the two things that really I want to get a couple more thoughts on. I was intrigued by Latin as the foundational element for the academic program, so I'd like to learn a little more about that. And the other intriguing thing was the historical approach to all subjects. I think specifically science was mentioned, and how that science will be taught in a historical approach. So, so if you could explain the strength of teaching Latin as a foundation, and then describe a little more about the historical approach of teaching the subject. So those were things that were intriguing, and I'm still processing through, and I'm sure that you'll be able to help me understand deeper.
Well, I'm glad to, and I'll talk about the historical approach, and I think I have a Latin teacher in the audience who will give a little more depth there than
Love
I
to
could.
hear. Love to hear.
But our humanities course, I think, is central, and the vision is that a faculty collaborates on that course. It's not just a single teacher who's using a textbook, but there's a structure in place for collaboration throughout the year. And the course has been developed in an interesting way by a music teacher, by a history teacher, and so the teachers bring in their expertise. And the structure of having these cycles, fields of history, would be brilliant because it ensures that it is interdisciplinary from the start, rather than teaching a period of history, names and dates. And we're trying to get away from that type of learning to get to a higher level where students are able to make those connections. I envision a student being able to stand up and talk about strands of history, talk about art history, music history, history of architecture. And that really is not part of the typical system, particularly at the middle school level and even in the high school. And I've looked at state tests in history, and they tend to ask for discrete points. But this historical approach really will foster thinking and writing, and not just college readiness, but students who are successful in college. And if I can bring in Dr. Thorburn to talk a little bit more detail about Latin, I'd be delighted.
Madam Chair, is that all right? Okay.
Absolutely.
State your name and title, please.
My name is John Thorburn, and I'm the Director of Language Arts and Foreign Language for Responsive Ed.
And going back to I think the question, help me understand the function of Latin as a foundational approach to all the academic, for the academic program. I found that very intriguing, would like to know more how that fits in the structure of the academic program.
Okay, in grades 3 through 5.
Sir, if you'll speak into the microphone.
Sorry. In grades 3 through 5, our students work through a program called English from the Roots Up. This consists of 200 word roots from Latin and Greek. So in grade 3, they do the first 50 roots, grade 4, the next 50, and in grade 5, they do the second volume. And so preparation, learning these roots will help prepare them for the actual Latin coursework that they'll do in grades 6 through 8. In grades 6 through 8, we have what's called a lively Latin program. And this program takes students essentially through the first half of Latin grammar. It includes exercises in etymology, word power. It includes study of mythology. It includes study of famous episodes from Roman history. And so by the time that our kids have completed this program in grade 8, then they essentially will have completed the first half of Latin grammar, what would be the equivalent of one semester of college Latin. And so one of the reasons why we feel that Latin is important is because it helps basically sort of teach students to take apart English, ironically, from a very rudimentary level. And so I like to use the analogy of the automobile. And so we teach kids not only how to sell the car, but we teach kids how to take the car apart and put it back together. And when one studies Latin, you really get down into the nuts and bolts of English grammar. And so our students should be able to explain the difference between active voice verbs and passive voice verbs in not only Latin but also English. And our students should be able to know the difference between who and whom, because the foundation for that can actually be found in Latin. And so what we've discovered and what has been known for a long time by classicists is that studying this language which provides us with more than 50% of our own vocabulary, will help students in especially achievement scores and those assessments. Ironically, also Latin seems to be really conducive to the study of math. In my own experience, taking the SAT and the GRE tests, I always scored higher in math than in verbal, even though I hadn't had a math class in several years. And so there's just something about Latin, there's a real logic to the language, and this is conducive, I think, to a lot of disciplines. And because Latin touches so many different disciplines, it touches religion, art, architecture, philosophy, and language, it really permeates a curriculum. And so that's one of the reasons why we feel that it's so important. One of our distinctives, one of our goals is to help students make connections across disciplines. And so Latin reaches out and touches a lot of different areas. So,
Thank you. Is it Mr. Thorburn, is that right?
yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I appreciate that, and that help me understand, and I appreciate that. And if I could go back to Dr. Duncan, you had made a comment just before you left the podium, and I was just curious. You said there was great interest in the classical model based upon, I'm not sure, was that through, how did you find that there was a great interest in the classical model of education, and for a classical model and the academic approach? Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I think first of all, it's evidenced by the school up at Northwest Arkansas, which is located in Bentonville, which is a classical academy. That school has shown great growth and is in, I believe, the top 5% of the scale for test scores. We have Ms. Susan Provenza here, who is the headmistress at Northwest Arkansas Classical Academy, and I'd be glad to have her address with you the classical thoughts that parents are voicing from that school alone.
Yes, ma'am. I would appreciate that.
Were you sworn in?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. I'm Susan Provenza. I'm headmaster at Northwest Arkansas Classical Academy. And what we are finding is we continue to have a fairly long wait list. This is our 4th year this year, and we are grades K through 11. And so, recent estimations, we're only in, day 3 of school this year, but our recent estimations are we're well over 500 students still on our waiting list, waiting to get in. Our families appreciate the classical approach because they feel like it's a very all-encompassing approach. It is very interdisciplinary. I like to say it's kind of interesting, we don't do life in subjects, so it's interesting that we do education in subjects. And what classical education does is it takes all of those subjects and it helps put it together so that, when you are learning about languages, you're learning about the history of those languages. When you're reading books, you're learning the history that's connected with those books. It's important to know why William Golding wrote Lord of the Flies, what was going on in history when he wrote that. And so those are kind of some of the discussions that we're able to have with our students simply because of the way that that model fits together.
Thank you very much.
Hope that helps.
Any other questions? Mr. Rogers?
You just said there is a waiting list at Northwest Classical? There, is that what you just said? There is a waiting list? Yes. And then also back to this one, Fayetteville Classical. I have a couple questions. The $250,000 special grant that's listed on the budget, I was just trying to figure out what that is.
Ken Harp, Director of Finance for Out-of-State Operations for Responsive Ed. That $250,000 for each of the first 2 years is an anticipated grant from the Walton Family Foundation to help get the school started in an appropriate manner.
Anticipated or already received?
Not already received, anticipated, and that's based on our history with the Walton Family Foundation and our other Arkansas schools starting.
But you have a commitment letter from them?
Pardon me?
You have a commitment letter from them?
Yes, it should be as part of your packet. It indicates their strong desire to continue to support our schools.
And then also, I have a question about the lease agreement. On the budget, it's listed a lease agreement of $290,000, but then also included in the budget is another close to $30,000 for maintenance of the building. So does the lease agreement just cover using the space? It doesn't cover building upkeep or anything like that?
Does it cover, it covers usage of the space? Did you ask if it covers building out the space?
Well, because you've got in your budget that you're going to have to building repair and upkeep on it.
Well, that is a
Then you're
standard formula we use in all of our school operating budgets for any unanticipated items that may not be covered under the terms of the lease agreement. In other words, there may be some building repairs and maintenance that would be our responsibility as opposed to the landlord's. And so we typically place about $25,000 or $30,000 in each of our schools' operating budgets to cover unanticipated building repairs and maintenance.
And then what is the Classical Academy getting for the $266,000 management agreement?
Okay, I can be happy to answer that question. There's a vast array of services that the administrative fee covers. First of all, we provide legal services to all of the schools under the Responsive Ed umbrella, including any litigation the schools may be subject to, as well as any employee disputes. There is a lot of school operational support that is provided by Responsive Ed. A regional director of operations and academics is assigned to each of our campuses to provide operational support and academic support. That also ensures adherence to our quality control standards. So there are site visits by Responsive Ed quality control personnel to ensure that all our procedures and policies are being adhered to on that campus. There's development of parent and student handbooks under the school operational and academic support. Our information technology department provides all the infrastructure updates and maintenance for all technology at all of our campuses, as well as technicians who troubleshoot on a daily basis. They also provide the computer lab setup and support. Our marketing department, which is responsible for recruiting students across all demographic lines, does mail-outs to all the zip codes in surrounding communities, including translation into other languages and other media advertising that may attract specific demographics. That includes print advertising, radio and television advertising, social media, and they also oversee parent interest meetings prior to the opening of the school. Our curriculum department provides knowledge units that are developed in-house at Responsive Ed to supplant some of the other curriculum resources that are available on campus, as well as providing educational computer programs. Our health services department provides training of all school nurses, oversee all student health screening, provides CPR and defibrillator training, and do campus site visits to make sure that all state and federal health service mandates are being met at those campuses. Our child nutrition department provides all mandated training and certifications for CNP personnel on the campus, all required state and federal reporting, all vendor bidding processes for outside suppliers of our food services. Our facilities and real estate department do all lease negotiations, building purchases, building maintenance contracts that are necessary, janitorial service contracts that are necessary, as well as other special building issues to ensure compliance with ADA. Our finance department provides all necessary items that go into AppScan and soon to be e-finance, all the payroll function, all the disbursements and purchasing function, oversight of the federal programs, budgeting for each of our schools, general accounting, overseeing the spending of categorical state funds as well as federal funds, oversight of the annual audit for each of our campuses, and regular financial statements for our in-house management. Our Human Resources Department provides all employee benefit administration, all employee recruiting, all employee inboarding and onboarding, all employee management, as well as employee handbooks. So as you can see, there's a vast array of back office services that our central offices provide. And as Dr. Duncan previously mentioned, we're pleased to now have in-state, in Little Rock, an Arkansas administrative office that will provide significant portions of those services here in-state with Arkansas personnel.
Okay. But it still didn't tell me what they're getting for $260,000.
Pardon me?
You broadened everything, like all your people are getting all this, but all I'm concerned about is there's $260,000 in this budget, and you talked about audit in there, but then in the budget for this school, they're also paying $15,000 for their own audit. You talked about maintenance and stuff, but as we just went over, there's maintenance in their budget. So I understand that y'all perform this umbrella of all the schools, but really what I'm focused on is the $266,000 in this budget for this school. I understand that there's a little bit that y'all collect, it's a membership fee for everybody, and so everybody gets to tip, but what is that $266,000 going to be for this school?
It's going to provide all the services that I just mentioned for this particular school.
Okay. And then the last question I have is the Community Advisory Council. Is that going to be open to the public when they get that set up?
I'll turn it back to Dr. Duncan.
Generally, community meetings are held at the school, and you'll find that our schools are very community-centered, and I believe Susan Provenza can speak to that for her own campus. So, community is what helps to build the school, and it's what helps to keep that engagement there. So would you like to hear from Susan Provenza on what we're doing in that area also?
Okay.
Sure. So obviously, community is always important when you're dealing with a school and you're dealing with parents and children, right? And you want to create that good sense of community. We do a lot of community meetings. This year, we are implementing one that's called Profiles, because my last name is Provenza and I'm not overly creative. But they're called the Profiles, and at each one of those meetings, we have a specific topic that we're going to be discussing with the parents to help them feel more a part of the school, to help them understand what it is their children are doing in the school. We invite community members to come to those things. So I hope that helps, but that's kind of just a little bit of what we do.
So I think what I understand is that the meetings are open to the public, that the media is told, and they are open to the public?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's still morning, I'm slow.
I should have been clear.
And the last thing I have is, and I'm not trying to stand on Dr. Saunders' toes, because this is usually his, but the whole waiver thing that we first started with, I'm just still a little confused with that. Because I got this sheet just today, and so I'm a little confused. So we didn't do a blanket one, but we've put new ones in there that y'all want to just have waivers for?
Madam Chair, if I may address
Yes,
Mr. Rogers'
please.
question. Yes, let me...
And are you addressing, Tripp, are you addressing the document we received?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. That was one of the things, and I apologize for not clarifying that earlier. So when I mentioned the initial comments about waivers, I was referring to the document that was just passed out this morning. It was an attempt to try and more clearly set forth and articulate exactly what RES was requesting, trying to eliminate some of the duplicity, and trying to line up everything in the categories as it should be. So with that in mind, that's the general comment. Also, if you'll see on the last piece, the waivers request to be rescinded, the very last page, the final three items, Art Code annotated 617-204, Art Code annotated 617-908, the teacher salary fund, and 617, subchapter 23, those are rescinded to the extent that they are listed earlier in the waiver sheet. So that means I think there were only a couple of additional things that were added, and those were to the listing of items in the school board section. Just again, things that are generally inapplicable to open enrollment public charter schools. And also, I believe that there was 617-812 that was added to the list as well, and that was going along with the class size teaching load waiver, and that statute, as you may know, is a result of legislation passed last year that allows the district to adopt a policy to pay teachers who volunteer either their planning period or other times during the day when they are free to teach additional students beyond the standards limit if such exist. And what we have tried to do is also further clarify and tighten up the rationale in each of the sections for you.
Did the charter office or our legal department have this before today? This?
No, sir, they did not.
Because I'm a little hesitant about it, just because I'm still I understand what you're saying. It's probably me, not you, and so I'm struggling with looking at a whole new huge list of waivers that I see, that because I understand you were just trying to take out the broadband and just put those specific ones in there, but without having the charter office or legal having a chance to review it before I got it, it just kind of makes me a little uneasy. But
Well,
maybe it's just me.
No, sir, and I understand, and maybe I can add something here that would be helpful too. I believe, and Ms. Davis can correct me if I'm wrong, that what I mentioned are really about the only new things to it. So this list is only new, so to speak, as far as those limited items. Otherwise, it represents everything that was in RES's responses to the department's internal panel. So it's really, in my opinion, and I will stand corrected if need be, that it's about 98 or 99% what you had in front of you at that time, just attempt to come in and clean up and make it much more easier for you to follow.
Dr. Gotcher?
Thank you. Mr. Walters, I think I'm understanding it better as well. So basically, two things have occurred in this document. You've listed the waivers to be rescinded, and then you gave an explanation of those that are inapplicable based upon a traditional charter school because of their limited size or facilities, et cetera. So not really new information other than the recension pieces and then maybe a further explanation. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, and if I may add something slightly additional to that, Dr. Gotcher, we came in later in the process, so to speak, and when we got in and started talking with RES, we had noticed that the comments that were made, especially by AD Legal, about being hard to follow, needed clarification, and so we were attempting to respond to that with this document and understanding it was hard to follow for them and hard to make meaningful comments, and obviously it would be hard for you trying to figure out as well. So that's what led to us pulling this together with RES to try and put new information in front of you at the last minute, but hopefully make your job and Ms. Davis's easier in the process.
That makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Walters. I appreciate
Yes, ma'am.
that.
Yes,
Clerk,
sir.
would you clarify one thing for me? I noticed in the application it said that on the school year waiver, they wanted to follow the local school district calendar, which in the application said Fayetteville, and of course now I'm assuming it would be Farmington, but wants the flexibility to adjust based on the needs of students and program. So does that mean they will go 178 days, they will go 6 hours a day, they will go longer days? What does that really mean?
Well, if I may break the answer up into two parts, I will give you my understanding, and then I will turn it over to Dr. Duncan for specifics. But I believe The flexibility lies in the ability, and this may not come until later years with the internships and other programs that were talked about, some flexibility around scheduling, some things that would not lend itself to strictly adhering to, in this case, Farmington's schedule. And I'll let her follow up with any specifics.
So by and large, we do try and mirror the local district schedule in which we're located for the ease of parents. We have a parent that may want to be interested to send their child to us for elementary and may want to keep their secondary child elsewhere. So for us, it's all about the options. Traditionally, we try and mirror the local district. However, based on classical or other idyllic things that are put into place at the school, we may add extra days. We may want to look at doing a Saturday offering. And so those kinds, not that Saturday school would be a mandated for Arkansas, but we just wanted the flexibility to do a little bit more with that than we needed to. And yes, we will be attending the standard mandated days. When we're looking at a waiver for the school day or school hours, if you'll note, that specifically was secondary and would be specific only to any students that were in internships or in CTE readiness programs that would lend themselves to that based on their learning within the educational environment of the school. So we're trying to keep options open for students, and that's what it's all about.
Well, Dr. Duncan, if you'll stay, I have a few questions for you. One, if you would expand on the technical assistance you've had in submitting this application.
And could you clarify that question for me?
Technical assistance. What technical assistance did you receive in submitting your application?
As far as in-state, out-of-state, just period.
Just whatever technical assistance you received.
So we look at technical assistance within responsive ed, within our classical academies, technical assistance with regard to marketing as to what parents are looking for. We've reached out to the Arkansas Public School Resource Center as to concerns that the department may standardly have in this charter time in the state with opening a new charter, so that we meet all of those concerns. And back to the waivers today, as Mr. Walters mentioned, our providing that today is not to confuse at all, but to provide clarification based on the need for that. So also looking at and visiting with our campus directors in-state as to what is working in-state with our students, looking at our test scores. We draw a lot off information that the department puts on their website for technical assistance in guiding what we're looking at to do within this state.
So as you look at the legal review that's posted on the board book, normally as we go through those, we see a lot of greens. And this time we saw a lot of reds. Mm-hmm. So since this would be your 5th application, could you address why there are so many reds? So many areas not clarified or fully?
So in looking at what we wanted to do with Northwest, the original thought was to possibly ask for a different additional waivers to provide a different flexibility. And in hindsight, in clarifying, particularly based on comments from the panel, it was clear that there were a little bit of angst about some of those new things. And so that's why we rescinded some things. We would like the department to feel very comfortable. And again, this is a charter contract. There will be some back and forth within legal, and the legal department will review everything, and things you don't feel comfortable for, I'm sure we won't be granted, and that's understandable. That's what this is for us to talk and gain information and, be prepared the best we can to do the very best we can for the students that we serve every day.
One of the things that you just mentioned was determining where the next school might be. Mm-hmm. So talk me through what precipitated the decision to request a school another school in the Northwest?
So, as you know, 49 has a lot of traffic, and Bentonville is at the furthest point of that area. And there's still a lot of interest in classical in that area. And so bringing another school in that offers this unique program, that is a free and public school that provides a smaller learning environment, is something that is, readily accessible to parents and there is interest in. So that's why we looked at the classical model. It seems there's continued interest in it, especially from that area of the state.
And Dr. Duncan, do you have any board members here today?
I do not, but I can give you the local board members' names if you would like those.
They're listed.
Ma'am?
I believe they're listed in the application.
That is the entity board, the local state board. The boards for within state are consistent of Ms. Erling Collins. She's a retired administrator and educator from Pine Bluff. J. Richard Cromwell IV, who is out of Bentonville representing that area where we have local representation with a local arena. He has parents in that area of the state. We have Jennifer Stevens representing Quest West Little Rock, who is a parent and a longtime resident of West Little Rock. Dr. Charity Smith is representing the Little Rock greater area at large. Our role to our premier candidate could not be finalized because she is out on leave currently, and so holding the last final interview for her for this upcoming school year is still pending, but we do have our candidate at large for premier also. So that's another reason why we're building the Responsive Ed Arkansas in Arkansas, building it up, to build that local representation so parents feel comfortable and they have a local board member. We have an 800 number also that goes directly to corporate. You can get me anytime through that, and you can get Mr. Gast, who is on the ground in Arkansas with me regularly and is a former superintendent himself. And so we've worked very diligently to provide local, in-state, and local voice and be reachable.
And if you'll just stay at the microphone. So my understanding is then the board for this school is also the board for the other schools in state?
It is the same board, much similar to the structure that KIPP has. So KIPP has the same in-state board. They have a representative from Helena. They have a representative from Blytheville. I believe they also have a representative from Forest City or are working on this. This is a standard line for growth that's also, I believe, supported by the National Charter School Authorizers Association. When you're looking at an entity that has more than one charter in a state, you want to be able to have a local picture of how you're doing and have representation from those areas.
And would you address if there is a superintendent, regional director, and campus director at each school, or if those are shared positions?
I am the superintendent for each of those schools. Mr. Curtis Shack is the regional director for each of those schools, so he covers 4. And then each of those schools has their own campus director.
Which is similar to a principal?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pepper?
I think Dr. Saunders is going to have a couple of questions here in a minute, but my question, as we look at the waivers, a lot of these categories of waivers involve the personnel, the teachers in your school. I didn't see much in the application, and I'd like, just to kind of put it out there and get your feedback on what are your plans for the support and development of teachers, because many times you have inexperienced teachers in charters, especially if you've got teachers who are there with a waiver from licensure, so inexperienced to the field and also inexperienced with the pedagogy. So could you talk a little bit about what are the specific concerted plans for the support and development of teachers?
I'll be glad to begin that discussion. Ms. Glenda Simons or Ms. Susan Provenza may want to speak further to it, Classical Academy those teachers will naturally go through their own professional development. This is something that's new. And to ensure that that goes well, those teachers are going to have professional development long before school starts. And traditionally, we hold that every summer. And that's to update and particularly for a new school, indoctrinate those teachers within professional development. We offer, and our teachers also attend professional development within the state at functions sponsored by APSRC, at functions sponsored by co-ops. So we continually offer professional development. If you'd like to know the particulars of some types of professional development that were offered for Classical Academy for NWACA, they would be very similar, might be somewhat differently depending on the population we serve and their needs. But I would be glad to have Susan or Glenda Simon speak to that also.
Well, and I guess specifically, will your teachers all participate in our state's mentoring program? If they're novice teachers? I
Yes,
see
ma'am.
heads
Yes,
nodding.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And, okay, that ends my question right now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dr. Saunders?
Yes, I have, looking at the application, and some, I have many concerns. As it stands right now, I do not feel that I could vote in favor of this. I have many questions. I think in particular, as I was going through the application, I got many times I think it was referenced that we want the flexibility. Others have been granted this, but never a justification towards how it would assist the students. And so I wanted to get down to some of the specifics. In particular, if I could just go back to one that you addressed earlier regarding the school calendar, and understand the need for flexibility at times and things of that nature, but at the same time, as I look, and I know that we have a responsibility to look at each individual waiver and make sure that not only do we know what it is that is being asked for, but the need and that it's justified. So if we look at the specifics on the school calendar, and you reference the law, I guess I have a question in that one, but I do with many others on specifically what part of the law are you seeking flexibility from? If we look at 610-106.
Could you give me that number again, please?
Yeah, 610-106.
I'm sorry, it took me for a while to find it.
Okay.
So that would leave us the flexibility to do an extended year if student needs dictated additional education down the road. You know, just providing that opportunity for that if it's needed.
Okay, but I don't see what part of that law restricts you from that.
If, you know, standardly in following the Farmington or the Fayetteville calendar, we would be following those days, but it would allow us more flexibility built into the program if the need arises to do that.
So would it be to attend school on Memorial Day?
May I address Dr. What you said is obviously correct about the length of the day. My understanding was that RES wanted the flexibility on the start date for beginning the school, beginning earlier than usual, in case they didn't want to be always wedded, so to speak, to the Farmington calendar, the traditional calendar, and be able to start earlier and have an extended year program if they felt that the educational needs of the students would be met in that manner.
So it would be specifically addressing the first day of school
Yes,
on
sir.
the A1A section of that?
Yes, sir.
Part of the law. So they would just be limited to A1A on that waiver, correct?
Well, I think the whole applies. That is the part, of course, that specifically talks about the start date. There are other parts in there, as you know, that grant flexibility around other things, make-up days and spring break and all that, but my understanding is the primary concern is the flexibility in the beginning of the school year.
So it would still, still seeking a waiver from that entire section of the code, correct?
Yes, but with a primary emphasis on the start date.
So the spring break would not, for example, I mean, just discussing it, it's, spring break would not be compelled to follow the spring break of the other schools in the state, correct? Have a waiver from that? That's what you're seeking?
Again, that's what we would like to mirror the spring break of whatever area we're in. You know, we do have weather things that come up. We do have other issues from makeup days that might arise. What we would try and do is mirror what we need to do to better serve the families that we serve. Particularly, again, if we have one in one school and another in secondary in another school. I mean, you would want those two children to have the same spring break for family, for time.
And there are provisions and flexibility of that within the code on the spring break in particular.
Right. So I think the bottom line is this, the intent, and Dr. Duncan can speak to this as far as in WACA goes, I believe the intent, as stated, is to follow the local district's calendar. But in the event that the situation arises, that there may be a need for variation in that, out of, I believe, an abundance of caution, making the intent clear at the outset, this waiver was requested.
Okay. Tripp, I think we've danced around this question for an extended amount of time. I think our question is, will there be 178 teacher-student days?
Yes, absolutely.
So the reason I think the question is vague is because it's leading me to believe that if there's a snow day, it might not be made up.
No, and I'm sorry, that was not the impression we intended to give, either verbally or in the request for the waiver. No, there's nothing being sought that would change the number of student interaction days, anything to try and diminish that amount.
So I think what we're asking for then is, we keep leaving it very vague, as in if a situation arises. Could you give us a sample situation of, it sounds to me like a sample situation might be that you might not follow the exact calendar. You might make up your days differently if they were missed, or you might start a little earlier, something like that, but a full calendar would be adhered to in some way.
Absolutely, yes. There's no intent here to move away from the calendar setup, so to speak, to have a full and complete academic calendar that would be in full compliance with 610-106, except perhaps on occasions for those things that you've just mentioned now. There's no attempt here to try and abridge or reduce the number of student instructional days. Just as with some of the other waivers on policies and what have you, just to have the flexibility to do things a little different way if necessary.
That's what we're trying to dig into.
Yes, ma'am.
What does flexibility to do some things differently? We just want to know what the different things are.
Right, and to my knowledge, unless Dr. Duncan has anything else, those are the possible different things here.
Dr. Saunders?
Okay, Mr. Walter, this might be for you. On this list, just to clarify.
Yes, sir.
This would replace any other documentation or application that we have regarding what waivers have been asked for. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. And I may just be confused on this, but if I look at page 1 in particular, and at the bottom of licensure, it says all other rules required to give effect to this waiver request. Were you striking that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
If I could
No,
kind of.
absolutely, yes. And that's
specific
one, and I
on some
appreciate
of it.
you bringing that up. That was one of the things I was going to mention in closed. Yes, sir, that those things, any time you see all standards or all rules needed to give effect or words to that effect, those are to be stricken. Yes, sir.
So would the two previous to that one, the ADE rules governing educator licensure. Are you keeping that one or striking that one?
Keeping, so in
Okay.
that section, the only thing we would be striking is that very last comment box, so to speak, or text box that says all of the rules required to give effect to this waiver request.
Same thing on the next section, correct?
Yes, sir, the
All
very
of the
last
rules?
text box.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
and if I could just go through here to make sure we're all
Yes, sir,
clear.
absolutely.
Employee compensation, the last two.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't see any other instances right offhand unless you noticed any.
No, sir. Your reading's correct.
Okay. That's all I had for now.
Ms. Leewood, do you have questions?
I'll ask. I don't know who can answer this for me, but just on your table of waivers for the school day, you've listed 616, 102, 618, 211, and then your rationale is this waiver request is limited to secondary only to provide flexibility for those students participating in internships and career opportunities. And I didn't see anything in the application that kind of went into how you guys are going to go about providing those internship and career opportunities for your students. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. I believe some of that was listed in the response originally from the internal review that was requested for clarification. So again, in providing internships to our secondary students, those that are interested, particularly when it comes to workforce, working with workforce and career technical education department and working within the community to look at students' interests, providing flexibility so that if those students need to, they can attend those things and have that part of their program.
What I am hearing you saying is that you don't really have anything concrete right now. You're going to have to wait a while and see what your students' interest will be, and then you'll work from that point on, trying to give them these opportunities.
Well, actually, this opportunity will not come well into our charter. We are a slow growth, smaller environment. We will start K-5 and grow one grade level a year. So needless to say, we will not even get into secondary until 5 years down the road. This is the same process similar to working into secondary with NWACA and looking at the students' interest there. If we have students that would like the flexibility to go ahead and do internships as part of their day, and it's academically built into where that is possible for them, that would be ideal. That builds them as part of the community, builds the interests in together, and provides that for those students.
I think what I'm having a problem with is there are other responsive ed sponsored charters out there. This isn't your first time, I guess, in front of the panel. And your application just, it's so vague. And I'm wondering if you have all these other charter schools out there, why is it seems rushed. And it seems like it was prematurely presented to us. I guess what I want to understand is why you don't have something more concrete, more detailed, when you have other charters whose structures you can look at and maybe use here. Is my question making any sense? Or
So we only have one other classical school in the state, and that has yet to grow to 12, but has been a very successful model within the state. and has done well academically. That school will be very close in proximity to this school, and I'm sure that campus director, the new one, i.e. headmaster, and Susan Provenza will work very closely together, as well as staff, to kind of mirror some of the things that have been successful with that environment there. In looking at the secondary program, we want to be able to build that out with the students and work with the Career Technical Education Department and provide what needs to be provided for those students to be successful. And again, if part of that is a student wanting an internship, if part of that is a student wanting to go to a readiness program at a local business that's something they're interested in and helps prepare them down the road, it would be great to be able to provide that opportunity for them.
Just one line. So you have one other charter school here that is based on the classical model. The other charters in Texas, there are two, right? Did I hear that? Seven.
Seven's what I heard. Is that correct?
Are those based on the classical model too?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was listening here. Forgive me. Yes, ma'am.
That's fine. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Just a couple quick questions on, I didn't understand, I know the request was for waiver from 617-209. Could you tell me why that one is necessary? Dealing with the consolidation of school districts?
That was just making sure, as part of that 617-201 at SEC, since it's been the policy or the practice of the panel and the board not to do generally at SEC, but to name out specific sections. That was one, for example, like the election ones that are just not applicable to charter schools, and we just, for the sake of completeness, asked for that.
Okay, so is it necessary, I guess?
No, again, it's
It's
kind of
not
like, it's kind of
applicable,
like the
right?
election ones in 614-101. Those are routinely requested even though they're not applicable.
Okay, and also, in regards to, it's under the section of employee contracts, in particular, the website postings. Would you also need to include 611-129?
Sure, yes, the statute that governs the posting, yes. And again, as you know, the sections 4 through 8, it's not an attempt to relieve the school of the posting requirements, just again, that their policies and their salary schedules, et cetera, that are going to be posted are not going to look exactly like a school district's.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
There, Jennifer, I just wanted, looking on Responsive Ed website, there looks like there's about 20 classical academies in Texas.
There were 7, yeah. 20 on the website.
Dr. Duncan, could you address that? I think someone had mentioned 7 previously.
Ms. Glenda Simons will be
Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Glenda Simons. I'm the Executive Director of Academics. And yes, with the classical academies, we have different phases of those classical academies as we roll out different pieces of curriculum and so forth. So the one that we're looking at, the 7 that we alluded to or that we spoke about, they're the ones that have farther down the road been using that classical curriculum and these theories and this program the longest. And so we felt like that was, those were the ones that we could substantiate that, yes, those are the ones that we've been using. All of our schools are moving to that, and they've been using different parts of this curriculum, this classical curriculum, along the way, but we felt like really stating those 7 because they're really using all of those elements.
Are you saying those 7 are K-12 fully implemented?
No, ma'am, they're not K-12. They're everything from a K-5 to a K-8, and just like Dr. Duncan spoke about, they'll be rolling up each year, different grade levels each year.
Do you have any K-12 fully implemented?
We have some of the founders' schools that are K-12 in the Texas area, in Dallas area.
And are they fully implemented with the classical model?
Yes, now there are Hillsdale model schools, and so their curriculum is a little bit different than this one is, but they are a form of the classical schools.
Dr. Saunders?
Yeah, one quick one on those 21 schools. Did all of those meet standard? Were all those classified in the same performance category?
I think there was, yes, all of them did. We have a virtual school that's part of that district. They're not really a classical school, I would say, so that they did not meet standard, but all of the others, yes, sir. Now, we have 2 new founder schools that were brand new this year that did not, but all of the others that have been using this curriculum, yes, sir, they were.
Okay, thank you.
And again, just to be clear, we're looking at the classical model that has been very successful within Arkansas standards. And, our Bentonville model has been very successful and is K-11 currently and will be K-12 next year.
Mr. Lester?
Just looking through the application and looking at the questions that were answered, many of them, or most of them, all that I can see is some of the questions dealt with assessing, looking at the data at the district that the charter school will be in, and all I see is Fayetteville. And my understanding is it's going to be in the Farmington district now, correct?
I have a question on that, so I'm glad you asked that.
Has there been any?
I think I can help.
Okay.
So, because Fayetteville and Farmington are so close and kind of tight knit, and Farmington only has, it's kind of enclosed, I think, by 3 districts. So when they notified everyone about wanting to locate a campus in Fayetteville, they notified everyone who needed to be notified should they also want to locate a campus in Farmington. So, speaking from speaking from a specifically logistic standpoint, they have met the requirements of notification of superintendents, and they would have to agree. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening. They will have to give you any more details on that. But I just want you to know from a logistics standpoint, they've met the requirements.
And I understand that. I'm just looking at the questions. To complete the following charts include the most recent literacy and mathematics performance assessment data and graduations or rates available for the district in which the charter will be located. They're going to be a unique and different district, and they all have their different data. That's my concern here, is that the questions they ask are based upon the Fayetteville School District. Is that what I'm?
I think that's right. That's what I'm guessing, yeah.
Just one more.
Mr. Lester, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I did see on the front that you did have the percentage of the free and reduced for both the Fayetteville and the Farmington. Is there a plan to go ahead and seek target assisted for your free and reduced status at that?
Yes, as the student population that comes to our school mandates that, of course.
Dr. Gotcha.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Provenza from, is it NWACA, Northwest Arkansas Classical Academy? I haven't heard that acronym. I want to make sure I was pronouncing NWACA correctly. One of the things that I tend to look at is the balance of transportation. And I know that in the application, and I'm asking you from your experience with the Northwest Arkansas Academy, I certainly understand, let me back up. The application stated that if transportation was needed, they would seek out public transportation. And I know that in Little Rock, that is provided for many students and some of the other options that are available. So thinking of your campus in Bentonville, correct?
Correct.
Are there challenges in getting transportation for students that don't have the readily available access for how do you solve the transportation issue should it become an issue for a student that seeks enrollment in your campus?
Sure.
Because I'm not sure that Bentonville has the same kind of public transportation. Anyway, I'll let you explain, please.
No problem. As of this point right now, we have not had to cross that bridge. We have not had any issues with parent transportation, the parents being able to transport their children to school. However, we have kind of proactively thought about that scenario. What happens if we do run up against that? And we do have a local Ozark transportation that would provide public transportation that we would seek out to partner with if we needed to, but we so far have not had to do that.
Thank you. And I think, Dr. Duncan, the only thing I was going to say, I know that the facilities piece is difficult because it's so far out, but if the campus was in Farmington, how would you address a transportation issue that might not be a challenge if the campus was in Fayetteville? So, and that's not, anyway, I'll let you explain.
Well, first of all, I think that starts with getting parents interested, getting parents informed, and working with parents and student needs. Generally, at our schools that do not provide transportation, we have a lot of carpool parents. We even have parents that will volunteer to help set up carpool scenarios, work with parents to see what students are located in this area, what students are located in this subdivision, and just be very proactive with those parents. So this would probably start at open house nights prior to school starting, working with parents ahead of time, getting that organized to assist with that.
Good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
My question is for Ms. Provenza. What collaborative relationship do you have with the local school districts?
We actually have a very good collaborative working relationship with the Bentonville Public Schools, because that's where we're in Bentonville. So they're probably the one that I work with most frequently. I was actually a teacher in the Bentonville Public Schools for over 8 years, so I have a lot of friends and colleagues who are still in that system, who are very helpful to us when we have questions, who partner with us when we need to. We have community events where we are all there together, and so we have a great working relationship with Bentonville.
And do you have coordinated meetings, scheduled meetings with the school district, or any type of coordinated events that are planned together?
Occasionally, we have had some coordinated meetings that weren't like public meetings, but were coordinated meetings where they wanted to get together with me, and we wanted to do those kinds of things. So
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
bet.
Dr. Duncan, what is the, has there been any outreach to the Farmington School District?
We have not heard any negativity out of the Farmington School District. I have not personally reached out to them. It was well served up in advance. We did put notices in local papers regarding a school. So they have been well served up that this is a possibility.
I was just wondering if you'd reached out to talk to anyone in the administration.
I have not currently spoke to that superintendent, no ma'am.
And is there any relationship with the schools and the co-op in that area?
I believe the Northwest Arkansas Co-op has been very user-friendly to our school and our campus at Inwaka. Susan, can you clarify?
Yes, ma'am, I can. We have an excellent partnership with them, and we go there for many of our trainings to make sure that we're in compliance with everything we're supposed to be in compliance with. They've been terrific, so.
Thank you. Ms. Pfeffer?
So something that has been kind of nagging at me for the last few minutes. So with the change in location from the school in Fayetteville to in Farmington, I just pulled up the lease agreement again. It was signed on June 23rd of 2016. And I know Ms. Boyd said that the proper notice was given as far as there's a charter application for a school in this area that will impact your districts, but is the Farmington School Administration aware that you have a lease for a school in Farmington rather than Fayetteville?
That is information that was submitted to the department and is public knowledge. And so I have not served up notice personally to that superintendent, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm not saying that you did anything
I
wrong
understand.
with that,
I
because
just wanted
as Ms.
to-
Boyd said, technically the requirement has been met. I think just looking at this date, that's the end of June, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, does Farmington know that this change has been made? And, you know, I think the school officials would say the same thing, you know, if they're not aware that they should be checking the, every agenda that's posted. I'm wondering if Farmington knows. I don't live in either community, but I do think, in my mind, there is a difference between a larger town like Fayetteville where there are already a lot of different options, in a smaller school district like Farmington, if the school is physically located there. I think that would make a difference for me as a parent and as a community member. So I guess that's not something I've thought about until just the last few minutes.
And I understand those thoughts. I genuinely do. We have worked very long and hard in the Fayetteville School District to find something. Could we find an option in enough time prior to the 17-18 school year? That would really be up to this panel. Going after an additional option at this point in time, we would really want to do that with knowing we're going to be granted a charter to go through even more facility searches. Like I said, it's very difficult as a landlord to want to look at a charter entity and say, sure, we're going to hold this facility for you until the panel meets. And then once you look at it, the state board reviews your decision, and if they want to pull it down, then they ask for that. And so that's additional time that often landlords do not understand. And so this is a facility we did literally find in June. It's not that we have not been looking for months. We have. And so that would be an option we would be open to should this panel, really want us to stick with the Fayetteville School District. I'm not saying that's not something we would not look at, but I am saying that would require additional time, and we would want to know that we would have a charter granted to go ahead and go on down that road. So we have looked at options and continue to every day, even now, really. But the Farmington School District is what we have currently. The Farmington location is currently what is available to us after months of looking.
Are there any additional questions from panel members? Mr. Rogers?
I'm still struggling with the whole new page of waivers. So Jennifer, if we accept this charter today and this page that they've just given us is in there, and I know Tripp did a good job trying to explain it. I'm still struggling just getting it today, trying to have the time that I feel comfortable looking at. So if we accepted this today, all these become part of their charter, right?
Yes.
And I guess, what is legal's concern about that?
Like I say, since we did get this, and I think somebody had already asked, and they did clarify that this list of waivers completely replaces what was in their document. But this one still has several issues, and some of them are, I think, just clarification from the applicant of whether or not, there's a couple times to where they asked to rescind, but they ask for the waiver more than once. There's a couple that are kind of a blanket waiver that has a little concern for me. There's a waiver of procurement, which, up until now, I don't believe that you've granted. So there are a couple, several issues. So, like I say, if you want, we can go ahead and go through them now, or how do you want to?
What's the will of the panel?
I don't really think that, I don't think this is the time to go through each and every waiver that's on there right now. It's just, but that is a hurdle that I'm having a hard time getting over, is this big document dropped on me today before I had a chance to look at it. Because, and some of it is the same, but one of the questions I did have about the waivers, like on school nurses, it says the whole time that they will seek to partner, they will seek for a mental health, they will seek for a nurse. So if we granted this today and they never had a chance to seek that partnership, does that mean we just gave them a waiver from having a nurse on that entire facility?
Yeah, unfortunately. And just on this document, I have identified 15 areas, issues on specific waivers, but a lot of their rationale is flexibility. And in our initial reviews, when we first get applications, we always send back for more information, like a plan on how to do it, rather than just, we seek flexibility. So I know that's still a lot of their rationale, which is some concern, but there are 15 specific waivers on here that I have marked just from reviewing it since I got it this morning that I have issues. And some of it's simple clarification, but there are some that do cause concern. And specifically, let me just tell you, on under support services, they ask for the entire waiver of the ADE rules governing public school student services. That waives guidance counseling, that waives school nurses, and they ask for the entire blanket rather than maybe a specific section that they need for guidance counseling or student services. So that one is a fairly large concern.
I just wanted to know that I wasn't the only one concerned with it. But
No.
that's what I'm having the hardest time overcoming, is the waivers and how this new one was brought to us today. That's it, that's all.
And I guess if I can just make a couple of comments too. For me, the concept of the Classical Academy, I thought the presentation was very good. I think, I don't have questions about those components of it. The questions that I have come into, and I realize the secondary aspect of it is going to be a few years down the road, but just the matter of the openness and the transparency and beginning the conversation so that the plans are more solidly in place, I would feel much more comfortable. I don't feel comfortable with the location change. I would feel a lot more comfortable if there is a phone call to Farmington and give Farmington time to respond that, okay, we know it, maybe we like it, maybe we don't. That's not part of my decision. It's just, I just feel like there are a lot of surprises here and a lot of uncertainty. And so that's where I'm just feeling uncomfortable today. So.
Anyone else?
Are there options for tabling and looking at it after there's time for some of the notification and clarity to
Ms.
put in?
Davis, would you review our options again?
Okay, so you may vote on this today. You may take it under advisement, and you can also send the applicant back for more technical assistance.
And would you, and I probably should have listened a little more closely, Arlie, taking it under advisement, exactly what does that mean?
It means that you can vote on it at your next meeting.
Which would be?
So if you send them back for technical assistance, then you can take it up at your next meeting.
Which would be?
September 16th.
Which then puts them into October State Board, and then if they're reviewed, possibly November.
That's correct.
May I speak?
Sure.
We would be more
At the
than
microphone.
happy. We would be more than happy to take additional time to provide whatever is needed to clarify. And so if that's what this committee feels comfortable with, we can certainly do that.
Smith?
I think I kind of started with this with my first question, but you've had 4 charters granted since 2013, and so I'm really looking for an established piece of data to show that we're making progress in those. And the data that I'm looking at right now doesn't show that. It shows, now it does for the Northwest Academy. That actually looks very impressive on paper, the scores there, lots of things going in the right direction. On the other 3, in comparison to the same demographics, they're all 3 have struggling points, especially 2 of them, more so than one of the ones in Little Rock. But I guess that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for Responsive Ed to say, this is our record in Arkansas. This is what we've done. These are the waivers we've used in Arkansas. This is what's working for us. And we're ready to open a fifth one and do it again. And I'm looking for that. That's what I'm looking for.
Dr. Gotcher?
Yes, and I agree with some of the comments Ms. Pfeffer made. And while I support this classical model of instruction, I do believe it provides a unique opportunity for pupils and parents and in that region. I just don't feel prepared. I feel that there's more work to be done, so I'd like to move with a motion that we table this application for the September date.
Is there a second to the motion to table?
Can we discuss it?
Absolutely.
We may.
After it's been seconded. If there is a
Yeah.
second.
That's right.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, now there's discussion.
So, part of the thing that when the reason it was rushed because of our dates to get it done, but also part of, I think what I was understanding is, until they had a commitment that they were going to get a charter, they couldn't secure a facility. So, if we just table it, is that really fixing anything? Because they're still going to be looking for their facility, but they don't have the secure of the charter, and so I'm just kind of while I agree with the chart, with the waiver thing and everything that's going on, tabling to discuss it would help, but is it going to fix anything?
Madam Chair, and I certainly understand the facilities piece, and I don't want to prohibit the progress of an applicant for, I mean, if in a perfect world, they'd be able to find a proper facility in Fayetteville, but if that doesn't happen, then I feel we could, because of the strength of the model and the strength of some of the pieces that I was encouraged by, if a facilities doesn't procure itself, then we'll have to address that at another time. Because it'd be difficult for anyone to try to ascertain a facility 16 months out. And I'd have a different opinion if it was moving to a Farmington campus, especially with the apparent lack of communication with that region. So I don't want to hold an applicant back for a lack of facility because it's so early. However, I get what you're saying, Mr. Rogers.
Well, it's not only just the lack of facility, but, I mean, we saw their application, and we saw, as Deb alluded to, all the red to it. And then they came back to it, and we're still having this much discussion, as what Stacy was alluding to, that they're already here in Arkansas. They already had the Southwest Classical that is working, that everyone says is working. Sure. Why was this application not tailored more to that? Why do we still have all these questions? Why do we still have the waivers that were just brought to us today? So I feel like they already had their chance. Because we had the technical stuff, they worked with our charter office and everything. So I'm still struggling with, if we table it now, what is another month going to do? And that's where I'm having trouble understanding.
Any additional discussion? Ms. Boyd?
I would just like to clarify, it won't even be a full month for them to prepare written responses to any additional questions you have. We'll need to post those on the 2nd, so essentially it'll be a 2-week turnaround for written responses.
Ms. Boyd, can you give us an idea of how much technical assistance was provided?
Yes, ma'am. So they send in the application like all other applicants. We review it in the internal review committee, and then we send questions back out. And then they send responses back in. This particular time, I provided one-to-one, I made myself available for one-to-one discussions with each applicant to work through any questions they may have had where the certain questions may have been unclear. So that's what we provided and offered to the applicant.
And did the applicant take advantage of those?
Not fully.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? We have a motion to table and a second. All those in favor?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
with this new information, can Can I withdraw my motion since there's already been a second, since there's new information, or we have to move forward? We have to move forward. All right.
I better take a roll call. Ms. Leewu? The motion is to table.
No.
No. Mr. Lester?
No.
Mr. Rogers?
No.
Dr. Saunders?
No.
Ms. Pfeffer?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
No.
Dr. Gocher?
Abstain.
Motion fails. Do I have a new motion?
I'd make a motion to deny the application.
Is there a second?
Second.
There is a motion by Dr. Saunders and a second by Ms. Leewu to deny the application. Discussion?
Ms. Boyd, may I ask you a question?
Of course.
When would be the next opportunity for this applicant to be ready? When would be the next door for their application to be heard if we cannot hear it in September?
Right, if they want to do a complete application, they have a couple of options because they already have charters in the state. So if they want to do a completely new application, then that application process will start in March of next year with the letter of intent, unless the schedule that we've adopted recently has changed. And when I say recently, in the
Sure.
past year. So it'll start in March, and the school won't open until the 18-19 school year. They could do a license request, especially since they're trying to duplicate the Classical Academy model. They could do a license request through the charter that they have with the Northwest Arkansas Classical Academy to open a school in another district that's going to be that same model.
Under that charter.
And they can do that at the time of when you all hear amendment requests in October or February, in any year.
So is the time frame in place, would they be able to do that amendment this October?
Yes, I think they have to, it's 35 days before your hearing, and I think the due date for that amendment request, to make the formal request, I believe it's either I think it's September 14th or 19th. 14th. Thank you, Tyler. September 14th.
Any additional discussion? Motion has been made to deny the application. We'll take a roll call vote. Ms. Leewu?
Yes.
Mr. Lester?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Dr. Saunders?
Yes.
Ms. Pfeffer?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Gocher?
Yes.
It's unanimous. Motion denied, or application denied. If you'll take a moment to write your reasons, and I would encourage you to be thorough in your reasons so that the school has an opportunity to learn from it and make revisions.
proofread. Yes.
Dr. Gocher?
My vote was for the denial of the application. While I support the classical model of instruction and it provides a unique opportunity for pupils and parents in that region, I feel there's more preparation required before I can fully support the current application. However, with my new understanding of the time afforded them in regards to the available technical assistance, I feel it may be best to apply at the next application cycle.
Mr. Lester?
At this time, with questions on waivers and a recent change in the location of the charter school, I feel as if I can't vote for this application at this time.
Ms. Leewood?
I voted in favor of denying the application. The application to me was just very vague. I had concerns too with their list of waivers and ADE legal not reviewing them. And I also had concerns with the performance of their other charters.
Ms. Pfeffer?
I like the classical academy concept, curriculum, and vision for the school. However, I was uncomfortable with the location change from the original application and the lack of direct notice to the new school district. While my decision would not be based on the opinion of the Farmington School District's approval or disapproval of the location, I feel that the public knew of the Fayetteville proposal but would be surprised with the location in Farmington. I would feel more comfortable if there were complete transparency. Also, the application alluded to communication and plans already underway with Arkansas Career Education, which is not the case. While high school implementation is in the future, plans need to begin now in communication with ACE to form a partnership to ensure there are maximum opportunities for student internships. Also, the legal office submission with waiver concerns is a concern to me, and I would like all legal issues to be addressed prior to a hearing.
Mr. Rogers?
I voted for the motion because while I believe the classical model is intriguing and can be successful, I just felt like there were too many issues and too many unanswered questions concerning the waivers, facilities, and how the overall school would work. With responsive ed already in Northwest Arkansas with Northwest Classical, I would have liked to have seen a cleaner application.
Dr. Saunders?
Yes, I voted in favor. I thought it was unclear and unspecific as to why the requested waivers were necessary for student achievement, as well as the continuing legal concerns.
Ms. Smith?
I'm looking for a record of success with responsive ed's existing charter schools in Arkansas. 2 of the 4 current schools are achieving at a very low level, while a third scores below schools with a similar demographic. I need to see evidence of continued growth within the current approved charters and a proven plan before granting an additional charter school.
Dr. Duncan, I hope you'll take this as constructive criticism. And do you have any final words?
Yes, Madam Chair and panel, I appreciate your time very much today. I appreciate your thoughts and concerns and consideration of this application. It is clear that there is interest in additional classical education in the northwest part of the state. But it is also clear, as an open enrollment charter, we face an uphill battle with facilities that are tied to many things that we are trying to do in preparing to open a school. I very much appreciate your time today, your thoughts, and your concerns.
Thank you. Ms. Boyd, I think you have an announcement before we take a break.
Yes. I just want to remind everyone that the National Association for Charter School Authorizers is holding a leadership conference in October. It's the last week of October. Kelly and I will be attending, and I don't know if if you guys have that on your calendar, or if you're interested in attending, but I wanted just to make you aware of that. I know some of you are going to is it the Honor Call conference that same week, so I just wanted to make you aware of that.
And have the
Right.
people for the next one?
The next, I haven't been able to locate the applicant that's for the next item. So I'm going to put in a call and see if I can get confirmation about where they are.
We need about 12-minute break? 12.5, Dr. Grocher says. Thank you. If I can. I didn't get it. Thank you. Ms. Boyd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have been unable to locate the applicant. I haven't been able to reach the applicant on the phone. And I would like to bring Ms. Davis forward to advise us on how to proceed.
Ms. Davis, you're recognized.
Since the applicant did not officially give notice that they are withdrawing their application, then my suggestion is you proceed with the item. They obviously will not be here to present. You can have the materials that they've previously submitted. Opposition still gets an opportunity, which I know that you did receive an email in opposition. You can ask questions. There's no one here to answer them, but you can ask questions and then you vote. But my recommendation is that you proceed with this since we did not get any kind of official notification that they were withdrawing it.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, Ms. Davis. Is there anyone here to speak for or in opposition of Locksburg STEM Academy?
No one's here presently to do so.
All right, then we'll move forward with discussion. Any questions?
Well, I do want to make a comment real quick, and then I'm going to make a motion to deny. But when reviewing the application in the charter office, they found that several sections of the application were plagiarized, basically taken from applications that can be found online throughout the application. And charter office did reach out and tried to contact, and we need to resolve some things, but first place scholars out of Seattle in 2014, there's like a page and a half that's completely taken almost verbatim from their application, and that's a problem. And so based on that alone, I make a motion to deny the application.
Motion has been made. Second. And a second. Any discussion?
I have a concern. I have a concern over the procedures, and I think it's, I'm in support of the motion, but only under the case that I want to make sure that the applicant, I guess just assuming that there's not any emergency that has prevented them, that they may not be able to contact us at the time, that if notification, within today occurs from the applicant that something restricted their attendance, that we would have the ability to revisit this.
Ms. Davis?
You could, that in the event that something did happen, you could tomorrow take up a motion to reconsider or rescind your vote, since it would be either, you could do either and reconsider the motion at that time. You could also table this until tomorrow if you want, or you can just vote on it and then consider it tomorrow, if something should arise.
And it will follow the same process of going to the state board at the next state board meeting, either way?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and just in the application, not only does it reflect and mirror verbatim some sections of the first place scholars out of Seattle, within the curriculum alignment part, it actually refers to the Texas Essential Knowledge, and so that led me to believe that that section too was also just copied.
Any other discussion? There's a motion and a second to deny the application. Ms. Lee Wu?
I vote in favor.
Mr. Lester?
I vote in favor.
Mr. Rogers?
For.
Dr. Saunders?
In favor.
Ms. Pfeffer?
For.
Ms. Smith?
For.
Dr. Gocher?
For.
The vote is unanimous. Motion is, the application is denied. Are there any additional issues before the panel today? Ms. Boyd or Ms. Davis?
Not that I'm aware. If the panel members don't have anything else they'd like to discuss, I think we're fine.
And would you look at the agenda with us tomorrow?
Yes, of course.
For tomorrow. Before we move, do we need to read out loud for the transcript the reasons for? Okay, we'll come back and do that.
All right. So tomorrow, the first item is a open enrollment application from the parent charter school, for the parent charter school from the Parent Community Trust. I have been in contact with them. They'll be here tomorrow, and they'll also have someone on the phone, and Teal will be here to assist us with that.
Okay.
Then we have the amendment request from Future School of Fort Smith has been withdrawn. And so then we'll also have the Ozark Montessori Academy come forward with the amendment request that's focused on class size.
And have they been notified that they may be earlier in the day?
The hearing letter said 8:30, but I'll touch base with them again today.
Okay, great. Just in case they were kind of time mapping that they might be later in the morning. Perfect.
Thank you.
In regard to the reason for your vote, Dr. Gocher?
I voted for the motion to deny. My reason, too many critical issues unanswered, and applicant is not present to address them.
Mr. Lester?
For, applicant was not present to answer critical issues in the application.
Ms. Lee Wu?
I voted for because the applicant wasn't present today and there are questions about the authenticity of their application.
Ms. Pfeffer?
I voted for the motion. The application was weak and new information calls into question the authenticity and viability of the request.
Mr. Rogers?
I voted for because the application appears to be copied from other online charter applications, and the applicant failed to show up to the hearing.
Dr. Saunders?
I voted for due to concerns with the clarity and specificity on the application.
Ms. Smith?
Poor application,
I'm sorry, it's contagious.
Try that one more time. Poor application. Seems that portion of the applicant's application were copied from other applications found online. Applicant was also not at the hearing.
Ms. Boyd, any additional comments or questions?
No, ma'am. I look forward to seeing you all in the morning.
I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Dr. Gocher, seconded by Ms. Smith to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting stands adjourned. See you in the morning at 8:30. Thank you all for attending.